Man does not live as an end in himself. He is a creature suspended between two poles, lower than the divine yet higher than the beast. The ancient philosophers saw this clearly. Aristotle described him as the rational animal, while Augustine recognized the restless heart that could not be satisfied by earthly things. Both testified to the same truth. Man is a bridge. He cannot remain in place. To stay still is to decay, for he is called to rise above his animal appetites and orient himself towards something higher. This movement is not a matter of survival alone. Beasts survive. They eat, breed, and sleep, content in their cycles. Man seeks more. He seeks permanence in monuments, clarity in laws, and transcendence in worship. His hunger is not only of the stomach, but of the soul. That hunger points toward God, even if the path is obscured by sin and confusion. The bridge is always present, and the task is always before him, to walk it. The grandeur of civilization begins with this truth. To build cities, compose songs, or raise temples is to take a step across the bridge. Each act of creation testifies that man is more than clay, yet he remains fragile. He can lose his footing, collapse into indulgence, and mistake temporary satisfaction for fulfillment. The danger is always there, but so is the call. Civilization is not given to him by accident. It is the means by which man continues the journey toward the divine. Civilization is the record of man's ascent. Each stone laid, each law written, each story preserved marks a step forward on the bridge that carries him beyond mere survival. It is not static, for the work of civilization is never finished. A city left unattended begins to crumble. A people without vision lose their way. Movement is not optional but essential, for civilization thrives only when it is carried forward. The Romans knew this when they built their roads across Europe, connecting distant provinces in a web of stone that made movement itself the guarantee of power. The roads were not only for armies or merchants, they symbolized the fact that Rome was alive, pushing outward, drawing lands into its order. When those roads fell into disrepair, when armies no longer marched, the empire withered. Decay revealed what had been forgotten. Civilization must always be moving. But this movement is not only physical, it is also intellectual and spiritual. The Gothic cathedrals of Europe, rising higher with each generation, reveal a different kind of motion, the striving upward of a people seeking God. Each new arch and spire pointed heavenward, a material demonstration that man was not content with what had been built before. Civilization carries within itself the demand to surpass the present, to reach for something greater. To stop moving is to betray the very reason civilization exists. It is proof that man can rise above the animal, and it is the tool by which he continues the climb. Civilization is not upheld by architecture or armies alone. Its strength comes from the shared confidence of a people who believe their lives have meaning within a larger whole. Morale is not an accessory to greatness, it is its engine. When morale fades, the outward form of civilization may linger for a time, but its inner vitality begins to collapse. Consider France in the late 19th century. After the Franco-Prussian War, the country still possessed fine cities, fertile lands, and an educated class. Yet it struggled to regain its former stature because morale had been broken. The defeat left the people uncertain of their future, and this hesitation weakened their cultural force. The grandeur of Paris remained, but the conviction that had once animated French ambition faltered. Without confidence in themselves, their institutions stumbled. Morale alone, however, cannot guide a civilization. It must be joined with vision. A people must know what they are building toward, or else their energy dissolves into distraction. The United States in the mid-20th century showed how this pairing can create momentum. A confident population was given a vision in the form of the space program. Millions saw themselves as participants in a single project, whether they worked in factories, laboratories, or classrooms. The destination was clear, and morale carried them toward it. When morale is lost or vision is absent, civilizations fall into inertia. But when both are present, the people are united in movement and the civilization advances with purpose. If morale gives a civilization its strength and vision gives it direction, aesthetics provide the compass that orients both. Beauty distills an ideal into visible form, making it present to the senses and impossible to ignore. A statue in a square, a hymn sung in unison, or a mural on the wall of a church all tell a people who they are and what they are meant to become. Aesthetics speak wordlessly, yet with more authority than argument. In Florence, the Renaissance was not sustained by philosophy alone. The frescoes of Giotto and the domes of Brunelleschi gave shape to the ideals that thinkers articulated. Citizens could look upward at the great dome of Santa Maria del Fiore and see a vision of order, proportion, and aspiration embodied in stone. The building did not explain why Florentines should strive for greatness, it revealed greatness before their eyes. Beauty was the city's orientation. When art embodies the highest ideals of a people, it allows them to feel the destination toward which they march. Without it, abstractions remain fragile. Vision, untethered from aesthetic form, struggles to grip the imagination. Words may inspire, but images, music, and monuments endure. They are the fragments of the ideals scattered across daily life, guiding even those who cannot articulate the philosophy behind them. Aesthetics orient civilization by fixing the ideal in a visible form. They remind people of their shared horizon and allow every man, whether scholar or laborer, to glimpse the greater destiny that lies ahead. Civilization cannot afford to treat beauty as a luxury. It is a necessity. The order of streets, the dignity of public buildings, the grace of gardens and statues, all these shape the spirit of a people as surely as food sustains their bodies. To repair a road or purify water is vital to health. To build something beautiful is vital to morale and vision. A society that neglects one while tending the other cripples itself. This truth was evident in ancient Athens, where Pericles poured public funds into the Parthenon. It was not a matter of private taste. The temple was a civic duty, binding the city together in reverence and pride. Citizens saw their collective strength made manifest in marble. Their participation in the polis was strengthened by seeing beauty raised above them, confirming that they belonged to something enduring. The same pattern appeared in the great American cities of the early 20th century. The City Beautiful movement sought to elevate public life through parks, boulevards, and monumental architecture. Its leaders understood that well-ordered beauty reduced crime, lifted spirits, and gave dignity to the poor as well as the wealthy. A city's beauty was not for private enjoyment, but for the health of the whole body politic. To neglect beauty is to leave a gap in civic life, a void that cannot be filled by technology or wealth. Civic aestheticism is the recognition that beautification belongs to the same order of responsibility as sanitation and public safety. It is part of the duty of governance. When beauty is neglected, civilization begins to rot from within. Roads may still be paved and towers still raised, but their form no longer uplifts. They become shells, bare structures that reflect no higher vision. A society that ceases to care for beauty tells its people, silently but insistently, that nothing matters beyond utility. The result is demoralization, a quiet corrosion of spirit. One can see this in the architecture of post-war housing projects. Built quickly and cheaply, they were meant to solve material problems. Yet their concrete blocks and monotonous rows stripped residents of dignity. Instead of elevating the human spirit, they reduced it to a number. Crime flourished. Despair settled in, and entire communities unraveled. The physical neglect mirrored the cultural one. What was absent was not shelter, but beauty. Into this vacuum steps a counterfeit creed, the notion that art is nothing more than self-expression. Without civic aestheticism, the burden falls on individuals to invent meaning. The gallery replaces the temple, the artist replaces the citizen, and fragmentation follows. Each person is encouraged to create their own world, which cannot be shared. Beauty ceases to be common property and becomes a private indulgence. The collapse of beauty is the collapse of orientation. Without shared symbols and spaces, a civilization dissolves into a crowd of strangers. Neglect produces not neutrality, but decay. In the absence of civic aestheticism, ugliness fills the streets and the culture turns inward on itself, unable to remember what it once strove to become. The modern view of art emerged within the liberal order. It places the artist at the center, elevating personal vision above the needs of the community. The canvas becomes a stage for self-expression, and the value of a work is measured by novelty or shock rather than its ability to orient and elevate. This conception of art, far from neutral, undermines the very cohesion upon which civilization depends. Consider the trajectory of 20th century painting. Figures such as Jackson Pollock were celebrated not for what their works revealed about truth or order, but for their defiance of form. A splattered canvas could be hailed as genius precisely because it rejected the standards that had once bound art to higher purposes. The artist became priest and judge, accountable to no one but himself. The audience was reduced to onlookers, expected to marvel at the courage of self-expression rather than participate in a shared vision of beauty. Civic aestheticism rejects this atomization. It insists that art is not private indulgence, but public duty. A work of art is rightist when it strengthens the bonds of community, when it gestures toward a transcendent order, and when it affirms the hierarchies necessary to achieve it. The cathedral is rightist. The town square is rightist. They exist to lift the many through the labors of the few, to give form to ideals beyond the reach of any single man. In this sense, beauty is not neutral ground between competing ideologies. It is a battleground. One side exalts the self, the other binds the self into something greater. If civilization falters through neglect, it can be renewed through beauty. The path is not mysterious. It requires that art be reclaimed as a public duty, not a private pastime. A city adorned with statues, gardens, and dignified buildings speaks to its people every day, telling them they belong to something greater. Beauty restores confidence, and with confidence comes the will to act. Examples of renewal are not confined to the distant past. In the late 20th century, Warsaw undertook the painstaking work of reconstructing its old town, destroyed during the Second World War. The effort was not utilitarian. Prefabricated blocks would have been cheaper and faster. Yet the people chose to recover the beauty of their heritage, brick by brick. That act of civic aestheticism gave the city back its soul, proving that beauty could heal even the deepest wounds. Renewal also requires vision. Beauty cannot be an afterthought, tacked onto utility. It must flow from a conscious belief that civilization has a destiny. Without that conviction, ornament becomes decoration, and decoration soon fades. Civic aestheticism calls for more, for governments to see beautification as a responsibility, for artists to recognize their role as servants of the community, and for citizens to demand surroundings worthy of their dignity. Through beauty, the bridge between man and God is strengthened. Through beauty, the movement of civilization regains direction. Renewal is possible, not by novelty or disruption, but by recovering what has always been true. A people who honor beauty honor themselves, and in doing so, they rise.